I'm looking forward to getting into some of your questions later, but I would like to go into some important news tonight first. Chocolate and Fluffy are playing downstairs, and it makes me feel so good that they are so happy and so healthy. But my heart goes out in deep sadness to the many innocent families and pets who in this 2019 hot summer have lost their beloved animals to an insidious and lethal threat in our global warming environment. The poison is called toxic blue-green algae that spreads in a thick, ugly green or brownish-red poison on top of fresh or ocean waters. Toxic algae smells badly and it makes many people sick. But animals, especially dogs, can be attracted to that same smell and taste and want to get into the murky water. The toxic algae is filled with neurotoxins that can kill animals within an hour of exposure. And the dangerous, poisonous blue-green algae are now found in all 50 states. During this 2019 hot summer, there have been swimming bans from the Pacific Northwest to Indiana, to Ohio, to the entire Mississippi seacoast, to Lake Allatoona north of Atlanta, to Lady Bird Lake in Austin, Texas, to Lake Hopatcong in New Jersey, and Wilmington, North Carolina, where 3 beautiful pet dogs died within hours on Thursday, August 8, 2019, poisoned by toxic blue-green algae in local waters. Owner Melissa Martin took her 3 beloved dogs to a Wilmington pond to cool off and just have fun. She said only her white Westie, Harpo, jumped into the water, but he got the other white Westie, Abby, and a poodle named Izzy wet and muddy too. Melissa told the New York Times, quote, "When we went home, I started to give Harpo a bath when I heard my partner shriek from the yard. Abby was having a seizure. Her back legs were trembling, her body was curved in the shape of a C and burning with fever to touch," close quote. Frightened, Melissa Martin drove Abby to the local animal emergency hospital, where the vet urgently ordered Melissa to get her 2 other dogs to the hospital as soon as possible. But all 3 died soon after. Therapy dog Harpo put his paw on Melissa's arm as if to comfort her right before he passed. No one has monitored statistics about how many pets die each year from drinking and swimming in toxic waters infested with dangerous algae. But as the earth keeps warming up, one way to help avoid the dangerous green waters is to check with your state's Department of Health for toxic algae warnings and interactive maps that show where poisonous algae is showing up before visiting any inland or coastal beach with your pets. Now this morning, there was a science alert headline. Astronomers have detected a whopping 8 new repeating signals from deep space. The news is about those intense flare-ups of fast radio bursts that were first reported in 2007. The FRBs are detected as spikes of radio data that last only a few milliseconds, but discharge energy equivalent to 500 million suns all at once. Suns that would be like our yellow sun, but 500 million of them in a millisecond. Since their first appearance in 2001, astronomers have discovered at least 85 of what they call these FRBs, fast radio bursts. Adding to the mystery is that some fast radio bursts repeat again from the same place. That means that whatever is the source of the gigantic energy release, it isn't blowing up in the process because the same spots have repeated with these bursts of energies. At the start of 2019, there was only 1 fast radio burst that had been known to flash repeatedly. But then, in late January this year, scientists reported a second repeating fast radio burst. And now, with this news headline today, the total repeating fast radio burst has increased to 10 different sources. Those additional 8 repeating bursts were reported in this week's The Astrophysical Journal Letters after detection by the Canadian Hydrogen Intensity Mapping Experiment known as the CHIME radio telescope. The astronomers doing the research at the Australian Square Kilometre Array Pathfinder that picked up the 8 new repeating signals report they came from a Milky Way-sized galaxy about 3.6 billion light-years from Earth. In another FRB detected in 2016 that pulsed 9 times, it was traced to a very different, small galaxy about 1.5 billion light-years from Earth. In the brief history of the FRBs since 2007, the radio frequencies of the repeating bursts have ranged from 700 megahertz down as low as 400 megahertz. The first 2 repeating fast radio bursts also, they showed a downward drift in the frequencies. Each burst got successfully lower in pitch. And now the newly reported 8 repeating FRBs also had frequencies that were shifting downward. And the question is, could the changing radio frequencies downward in these repeating fast radio bursts be a clue to what the source is? Scientists studying the baffling phenomenon have not found any detectable gamma or X-rays associated with the flashes, so some astronomers say that would tend to eliminate the possibility of gamma ray bursts, the merger of 2 neutron stars, merging black holes, or even evaporating black holes. Even more puzzling, the radio bursts are calculated to be coming from 5 to 10 billion light years ago in the early to middle age of our universe that is 13.8 billion light years old. What could be emitting such strong radio bursts so far back in the evolution of our universe? Maybe there is a chance that much older and more technologically advanced intelligences are really out there, and that the FRBs could be from extraterrestrial life, even though there is no supporting evidence to date yet. Well, quantum physicist Michio Kaku even describes the possibility of different levels of advancement in cosmic civilizations well beyond Earth humans. Would very advanced intelligences communicate galaxy to galaxy, timeline to timeline, dimension to dimension? What kind of energy systems would be involved? Serious astronomers are now asking those questions because of the persistent fast radio burst mystery. And as you all know, I have been reporting about the latest round of bloodless mutilations of cats, again in Everett, Washington, which is north of Seattle, where there have been so many cycles of bloodless half-cats over the past decade or so. And now the high strangeness is leaving only the front 2 legs or the back 2 legs of the cats, and in a couple of cases, just the head of a mutilated cat was found not far from 2 legs. And there have been 18 cases in the Everett region since June 5th. Well, simultaneously today, I received an email from a Boeing employee in Everett who reported a very strange, loud jet sound at 1 a.m. early Sunday, August 11th. And he is baffled by the sound because he says there would not have been any jets taking off or landing in Everett after midnight on Sunday. And here is what he wrote to me in an email. I live in Everett, Washington, and I am a Boeing employee. Sunday morning, August 11th, 2019, right around 1 a.m., I listened to what I thought was a large passenger jet take off from Payne Field, located next to the Everett Boeing plant. After about 7 minutes, I realized that the sound had not diminished as if the jet were flying out of range. It sounded like a maximum thrust engine test, like you hear just before a jet takes off and the pilots pulse up the engines and then bring them back down to idle. Payne Field would not be doing anything like that at 1 a.m., especially not on a Sunday night. Boeing, being about 1 mile away, would not be doing any thrust tests at 1 a.m., and it had no jets moving on their fields or on their factory floor. I work in the main building, which is the biggest Boeing building clearly seen on Google Maps. I know that a small crew was working that night, but nothing to do with any engines testing or running. Point I'm making is the sound did not come from Boeing. Payne Airfield does not do departures at 1 a.m., and a jet landing would not take more than 1 or 2 minutes to idle down, and yet this roaring jet sound persisted for at least 7 minutes. I have been searching around the net for the last few days trying to see if anyone else might have noticed the sound, and then I came to your article dealing with the 2004 incidents of strange jet noises in Everett, Washington. This is the first time I have heard it, but now I am paying more attention to every sound. Linda, if you have heard of or know more about what this local jet type sound could have been on August 11th, please email back to me, signed R.W. Well, now I would like to learn if any of you out there in the Everett, Washington region has heard about a loud, sort of jet-like sound around 1 a.m. on the early Sunday morning of August 11th, or any other strange sounds like the booms or the metallic trumpet sounds that people around the world have reported periodically since 2011, and I have done over 160 reports at Earthfiles. And do any of you in my YouTube broadcast audience tonight know about any more strange cat or other animal mutilations in the Everett, Snohomish, Washington region, or maybe even where you live? A lot of these mutilations only get to local newspapers. They never get out to national news. And the only way I can learn about them is from people who are tracking my work and who might be here tonight in this Earthfiles YouTube broadcast. And if so, you can communicate with me anytime at my email, earthfiles@earthfiles.com. Think of a reporter who files news about the Earth, so it's earthfiles@earthfiles.com. And what I would like to explain at this point is go a little further, that what the Boeing engineer was reporting, I went back and found in my Earthfiles reports, one big one on September 1st, 2004, Everett, Washington, north of Seattle. We're now talking 15 years ago from the email about this past Sunday. We're now 15 years, but what you're going to hear is exactly what he wrote about now. Everett, Washington, north of Seattle, location of repeated loud, unidentified jet engine sounds in 1996 to 1997. And in 2004, the Earthfiles that RW was referencing, there was an email from a resident named Gary Val Tenuta, who gave me his permission to share, and he was in Everett, Washington. And here is what he wrote then, quote, I live in Everett, just north of Seattle, and back around 1996 to 97, I kept hearing a loud noise that would wake me up in the middle of the night. So if we're going from 2019 back to 96 to 97, we're going back about 20 years. Same strange jet noises in the middle of the night, so to speak. He said it sounded, when he was reporting from 1996 to 97, it sounded very much like the sound of a jet engine. It would start at a low volume and increase in volume and then gradually subside to nothing. The event would last for maybe 3 to 5 minutes. RW's recently was 7. It happened 3 or 4 times at night, and then I began hearing it once in a while during the day. I even went out to see if I could see anything in the sky around my apartment. It sounded like a jet engine, very loud, very close, seemingly coming from everywhere, and yet nowhere. I couldn't see any planes in the air, although it seemed loud enough that if it were a jet, it would have to be flying very low. And also in Everett, in August of 2004, this was an email from Stephen Mones. He emailed me, quote, "I was awakened at 12:55 a.m. by a jet sound. Being a commercially rated jet pilot myself for 30 years, it always gets my attention. I thought the Navy was conducting nightly operations since we were only miles away from the Whidbey Naval Air Station. We see the Grumman A-6 practicing all the time over town, but only during the day, and the occasional flight of F-18s on their way in with the MD-80 medevac and Lockheed P-3 Orion sub-hunters around. But this was different. It started as a low growl and then grew to intense volume, so much so that it was vibrating the windows of my house. The culmination almost sounded like there were two jets that went supersonic, because I heard a double but subdued boom that thudded the house so much you could feel it, and it rattled the pictures on the walls as the sound rolled off what seemed to be the foothills of the Cascades, sort of like the reflection of sound that rolls off when there is thunder. At first, I thought we had an earthquake. We get one once in a while here. But this was again different, and there were no earthquakes, no seismic reports in our area that night. So one of the big values of going to my news website, Earthfiles.com, that I have been reporting since the end of 1998, so if you even start at 1999 to 2019, I have been evolving Earthfiles.com for 20 full years, and it has been divided in science, the environment, and real X-Files. And what we have just been talking about of these strange sounds that have been being reported, not just in Everett, but what is interesting to me is going into my own archive, having that reference from RW Now about last Sunday, the sound of a jet, to somebody, this is what he does, this is where he works, this is what he hears. And at 1 a.m., he thinks that he is hearing like a jet that's getting revved up, ready to take off, and can't understand at 1 o'clock in the morning, what in the world could it be? And he knows there is no natural explanation, not in the company of Boeing and not anything else that he knows about in that Everett to Seattle area. And so when you take his reference, he went to myearthfiles.com, RW did, and then he finds the 2004 reports that I did at Earthfiles about Everett, Washington by doing a search in the search bar. And you start reading about what was happening in Everett, and it sounds exactly like he, as a professional Boeing employee, was concerned about only a week ago. And then when you go into 2004, you find that those people were hearing jet sounds in Everett back to 1996 to 97, a whole another decade earlier. What in the world could this be? And for those of you tonight who are out there listening in my audience, who live in the state of Washington, especially in that area from Seattle to Everett and Snohomish, have you heard any of these jet sounds yourself? Have you seen any articles reported in newspapers, or have there been any broadcasts on radio or television? And if not, how could a lot of people over 20 years be writing me and reporting these strange jet sounds and it not be publicly reported? Any way you cut this is a really strange mystery. And what would there be in that area of Whidbey Island and all of the water and Puget Sound and out to the Pacific Ocean? Could it be possible that, and this is now tying into what whistleblowers are telling me now in 2019, that there are networks of tunnels, networks of deep, deep underground bases 15 to 25 miles going down from the Rhine that we live on. Could there be, even going down the water, going down below the basins of the water, in that northwestern corner where there's Vancouver and the Spokane and Seattle and that whole area that has so much water running through it? What, maybe possibly, that there could be some kind of an alien intelligence that hides or is based below the basins of the water. But then, if that were true, why would it catch human attention by making these strange jet sounds? And that carries over to the more than 160 reports that I have done since 2011, just on strange sounds around this planet. They definitely began in 2011. There were metallic sounds. People said, if you took two big freight trains and they are running toward each other, and you could imagine the sound of the two freight trains hitting each other head on. That's what a lot of people compared what they said were the metallic crashes. People would come running out of their houses, 2 o'clock in the morning, 3 o'clock in the morning, sun up, thinking there's been some horrible, horrible thing. And the street would be totally quiet. Ask their neighbors. Some of the neighbors would be waked up by the sound, but there was nothing reported in the media. That's one category. Another would be where the house shakes, there's cracks in the foundation, and some people who have served in the military, who have experienced this, say, Linda, it is like a compression wave from above. It comes down on one side of the house. It would explain why the neighbors across the street didn't hear, and yet our foundation was cracked. And they're thinking that it is because the compression wave came down through the second story to the first story and hit. Other people will swear that they were waked up sometimes at midnight, 1 o'clock, 2, and they feel shaking from below in their house, and they get cracks. So some people think the compression wave makes cracks in the cement. Others say it comes from below, and the mystery gets bigger and broader because you've got physical evidence, but you have no explanation. Whether it's coming from above or below, what in the world would be waking people up in the middle of the night with very strong, strange metallic sounds or booming sounds and leave physical evidence? And then there's the third category that haunts people. I've interviewed personally probably 20 or 30 people. Either they have waked up, or they have been out driving late at night, or they have been in their house because they were staying up reading a book or watching TV. And they hear what they say sounds like a trumpet, a lonely trumpet sound. Most everybody who has heard this, they go out onto a deck, or they go open their front or back door, and they go out, and then they hear. And sometimes they record on their phones. And it has a kind of a sound, a little bit like the same notes as you compare them. The most outstanding is the one in Kiev in the Ukraine from August of 2011. And it was, and is sort of a benchmark. It was attacked, and I think it was attacked because our government, other governments, somebody didn't want people to take the strange sound seriously. It was attacked because the woman who reported the sound and recorded it on her cell phone from a balcony, and you can see she's looking. She's looking as this huge metallic trumpet sound is filling the air. Her camera is like moving, like any of us would be moving. What in the world is making this sound? And she goes down, and there are people walking, and the people down several floors below where she's on the balcony, they are, for the most part, they're not reacting as if they're hearing anything, except for one or two people. There is one case where a woman stops And she looks up, and this goes on for 12 minutes. That is the longest sustained of the strange trumpet sounds. And now, coming full cycle to August 11th, Sunday, 1 a.m., a few days ago, back in Everett, Washington, this man who works for Boeing hears what he thinks is a jet sound, like has been so many times in that specific area. I hope that what I have been describing will provoke the curiosity of a lot of you who may be in areas where you've been aware that there have been reports, because they cycle in the same areas, just like Everett. There are places where I know that there have been specific sounds. Take Salem, Massachusetts. The fall, October, I expect that there will be strange sound reports from Salem without anybody knowing why. Fort Knox, Kentucky. Fort Knox, Kentucky is another one that's had all kinds. Going into Utah, California, every state has had some of these reports, but some places they recycle over and over and over again. And I think this is very important for us all to pay attention to, because what if all of these strange cycles of sounds since 2011 to date have something to do with alien presences cohabiting in our planet without our understanding who, why, what, and where, and are they responsible for these cyclic sounds for reasons that are incomprehensible to us who live on the surface of the earth? Could some of these repeating sounds have something to do with the core of our earth, that big, huge, spherical iron ball? A lot of people don't realize that the reason why we have magnetic fields, the reason why those wonderful magnetic fields repel the solar wind and solar particles and cosmic rays so well, is our planet that is 8,000 miles in diameter, 25,000 miles around, at its core, has an iron crystal sphere that is 2/3 the diameter of our moon. Just let that sink in. We live on the Earth's surface. We see the moon go through its cycles at night. The moon is 242,000 miles from us, and it's big. It's the biggest, most round moon that I think in the solar system. Now think of 2/3 of that as a sphere. Is that the center of our planet? And that big iron crystal sphere, slowly turns in liquid iron with a bit of nickel. They counter-rotate, and that's the dynamo that sets up our magnetic fields. And beyond there is magma at various different layers of temperatures that comes up into the big jello-like condition of magma that is not erupting, that is below the rind of land that we live on. And then there are the 2/3 of our planet that are deep oceans. This is an amazing, amazing planet. Everybody keeps asking, are we headed toward a pole shift when the North Pole will go to the South and the South Pole, as we know it, will go to the North? Last time this happened was 870-some thousand years ago. And there are signs that it might be heading in that direction again, but what would happen? How fast would it happen? Well, there has been a lot of various science reports, some contradicting each other, but there is this impression from clays in lakes, clays that have been studied, that there would be magnetic field lowerings, perhaps going all the way down to zero, and then bouncing sort of up and down over a long period of time. Well, when the magnetic fields of the Earth would go to zero, we'd have solar particles coming in, cosmic rays coming in, solar radiation. There'd be a heightened amount of skin cancer if that happened. Well, what would be causing the magnetic field of the Earth to go to zero if it isn't related to that big, huge iron crystal sphere at the center of our planet? And depending upon what that does, what that happens in relationship to magnetic fields and the poles, it's possible. There have been people that I've talked to who are in the geophysical area who say there might be the possibility of strange sounds that could emanate as the magnetic fields would go to zero. There would be changes around the big sphere, and that they might, and this is the important word, they might come through the magma as infrasound, INFRASOUND, infrasound. That would be completely inaudible to human ears. Infrasound can be heard by dogs, and that would explain one case that did happen in Fort Knox, Kentucky. And a man said he didn't hear anything, but one of his big dogs just went crazy, throwing himself against the front door. And another dog, the dogs were reacting, and he has no idea. And he goes to the front door and opens the door, and there was this huge boom. Shook the ground, shook his house. He thought a bomb had gone off. And it was like he thought 30 seconds before, the dogs were going crazy in the house. And then he could hear the boom. He couldn't hear what the dogs were hearing. It would have been in the infrasound. Well, maybe some of what might be a precursor to changes between the center of our Earth and what would be happening with magnetic fields eventually, again, when the magnetic field poles change, infrasound might go through the Earth, go up to the ionosphere, and be bounced back into audible sound. That's one of the speculations about some of a few of the strange sounds that it might have been occurring. But I'm just trying to lay out how complex this is, how fascinating it is, how mysterious it is, and that right now in Everett, Washington, two of the what I'll call the major real X-Files there are now again happening simultaneously. The strange sounds of jets and the bloodless mutilation of cats being found with a new twist, that no part of the body, not a half, not a front, not a back, but legs only, front or back, in 2 or 3 cases a head, but no torso. That's the twist, is happening again in Everett, Washington. So with that as a kind of launching point, I would like to introduce Peggy, who has been helping me with social media and YouTube and a whole lot of things, and she's going to be joining us on our Earthfiles YouTube broadcast on Wednesday nights to help me monitor the chat and to look at your questions and to give me some of your questions, which I'd like her to do now. And so, Peggy, what's happening in the Earthfiles broadcast chat now?
Hi, Linda. It was great. It was my first night here, and we have got some great people I just want to say hello to. We have Sleeping Purple Tiger.
Wow.
Yeah, and we have Rachel Dally Hug. Now, she did request a question. However, you answered it before I could even bring it up tonight. So that just worked out perfectly.
What was her question?
Her question was, what do you know about the strange, otherworldly trumpet sounds in the sky around the world?
Oh, I'm so glad I got that in tonight, because if it starts happening again, like all of these other things are beginning to happen again, and somebody can record it, we'll put it at our Earthfiles YouTube broadcast.
Fantastic. And I also wanted to bring up Mirror Obscura. He would like you to comment on Project Camelot.
I can't comment really, because I know that Peggy knows, Eric knows, Brad knows. I get up every day at 7. I go to bed never before midnight. And I'm not complaining, I'm not whining. Those 18 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year are the minimum that it takes me to stay on top of this multiple ring world that I am in now between television. I'm doing a lot more. We're doing 40 some programs now in Ancient Aliens for the History Channel. Yay! But it's tremendous amounts of work. I'm doing other TV productions. I'm doing radio programs with other people. I'm going to start doing my own interviews in about another month to start bringing you interviews into my Earthfiles YouTube, constantly adding and evolving what we do here. Then I have to write, I have to edit audio, I have to edit video with Brad, I have to travel, I have to try to weave in and out everything. And what I'm saying is, my life is nonstop focused on what I have in front of me. And what other people are doing in their world, this is the problem. You really can't judge always what is happening unless you really know the deep dive into the sources, the subject, the people, the events, and it takes a tremendous amount of work to do investigative journalism. Because investigative journalism is where you are supposed to try to dot the I's and dot the T's, even if you have to use whistleblower sources, which I have been doing. But if you put yourself in my shoes and you were going literally 18 hours a day, every single day, my being able to have any reasonably credible or adequate judge on what anybody else is doing would be impossible, because it's just, I'm doing everything I can to bring you guys the best that I can from the pressure of fact that I'm doing dives into, where I feel satisfied as a journalist. And so I hope with that a lot of you who ask me in emails, do you ever sleep? Do you ever eat? Do you ever go to movies? And the answer is yes, I have to sustain my energy. But the truth is, the absolute bottom line truth, I find that going through your emails, reading some of the approximately 20 books a month that are sent to me from people everywhere, being able to get on the phone and talk with people who have sent me some of the most astounding personal experiences, and that they don't want it shared publicly yet, but I will get to a point and I will then be able to share with you. It's a constant process. And there is nothing that rivals how intensely interesting and important I think this is. And going to a movie or something like that is, I will do it every once in a while, but I truly love, with a deep, heartfelt passion, being able to understand why are we on a planet of 7.5 billion fellow beings. And we're all learning that probably a lot of them are hybrids, and that those hybrids are not Homo sapiens sapien with another form of Earth humanoid, but probably with advanced intelligences that interact with our planet, and that our entire history has been concocted, and that our current day is concocted until we get that big headline, ladies and gentlemen and kids of the world, we are here to announce that we are not alone, we never have been alone, and that a lot of our past needs to be completely reinvestigated and rewritten. I can't imagine wanting to do anything else but try to understand what the real facts are about our genetic history, about our spiritual history, about our environmental history, and our relationship with this planet specifically, in a universe that is showing us that out of 3,000 plus exoplanets that we have found so far, scientists say not a single one of them seems to be like Earth, with its magnificent oceans and land and a temperature that seems to be, at least for us in this current round, we're getting warmer, but we are on a planet where life has thrived in millions and millions of patterns. And that may be really, really important to others in this universe. And that part of the reason that we've been kept in the dark is that we ourselves may be an experiment for somebody. But as we've all exchanged before, part of what keeps me going is that I am convinced that Homo sapiens sapien, whether it is a strategized, thought through genetic manipulation, or it was an experiment without any known outcome, whatever we are today, I personally think that our positives, our pluses, our souls and our hearts outweigh the violence and the sourness of corruption and wars. And that's another reason also to keep doing the work that I do. And I love you guys who are coming, and I hope every single one of you tomorrow get 10 people that you say come to Earthfiles YouTube broadcast, subscribe, because if my numbers keep getting bigger and bigger, then it helps with being able to continue to communicate on YouTube with the kind of audience base that then begins to make a difference. So with that, Peggy, I'll go and take another question.
Yes, this one is from Roz Honey. She wants to know what your opinion is. What do you think is under the South Pole?
Oh, well, it's not thinking. This is hearing the descriptions of these huge structures from two completely different Navy SEALs, one of which, Spartan 1, I have on video. And he is the real deal. He is describing first-hand walking in these huge, gigantic structures. The other Navy SEAL has been there twice. Spartan 1 has only been there once. This other one, not Spartan, the other one that's been there twice, was there as recently as approximately 5 months ago. He says, we'll just call him Navy SEAL 2. He says that he has watched and listened to my Spartan 1 and Spartan 2 whistleblower segments. And he says, Linda, you have the right information. And he said, if the day can come when I can stand in front of your camera and talk about what I have walked on, seen, what I have experienced, I will. Both men are talking about being 2 miles down under Antarctic ice. I think that's hard for people to get their minds around. wherever you are right now, sitting at home, in a hotel, in your car, wherever you are, just do a mental exercise right now. Imagine, and make your mind do this. Imagine that you went through the floor, the street, the beach, wherever you are, and you kept going 5,280 feet, that's 1 mile straight down. Then you have to go another 5,280 feet, 11,000 some feet, to get to 2 miles, going straight down. You're going through ice in Antarctica. If you were sitting in a car in Antarctica, you would be going down 2 miles through ice, not through a sidewalk and dirt into the earth. So you're 2 miles down. The Navy SEAL 2 has twice gone there by submarine. He's the one who says that 2 miles down, submarine comes in 2 miles down in the water, comes into an area that's already hugely constructed. And just like Spartan 1 says, no decompression needed. The temperature in where you come in and walk, between 68 and 72 degrees Fahrenheit. Energy systems they don't understand, can't comprehend. Get into huge rooms covered with something that looks somewhere between Egyptian and Mayan, a kind of hieroglyphic kind of language, carved miraculously, specifically, in huge details, in huge walls. Navy SEAL 1 says that he's been in one of these huge structures. They knew, by some measurement they made, probably with a laser, 80 feet, wherever you are right now, in your car, in your living room, wherever you are. Imagine, from wherever your feet are, going up 80 feet. And at 80 feet, there's this huge black ceiling. But there are no supports. It's as if the ceiling is floating. The explanation that both Spartan 1 and Navy SEAL 2 have given is they understand that it is self-activating software. The material that the huge structures in Antarctica are made of are coated with software. It's called self-activating software material. It doesn't need any computers, doesn't need any hard drives. It's all in the substance itself. Trillions of zeros and ones in code that can react, neutralize gravity, glow, whatever it was programmed to do. The structure itself is reactive to organic life, is reactive to light, is reactive to sound, is reactive to whatever is in there. And that, to the best of my knowledge, these huge structures are 2 miles down under the ice, and some of it goes all the way up. We're talking about the big, huge, flat, huge room areas. When he was talking about that octagon, Spartan 1, talking about that octagon entrance made out of what he was told was black basalt, and that 18 feet of one of the upper octagon entrances actually stuck above melting ice in an area near the Beardmore Glacier. So that's an entrance that could be revealed if you knew where to look. And that's the Here's another part. They both say that they know that Google Maps, in conjunction with the CIA, DIA, NSA, Geospatial, they feather out, make opaque, brush, airbrush. How many of you have tried to go to a latitude and longitude, let's say at the Ross Sea or the Beardmore Glacier in Antarctica, and you've been over a part of Antarctica where you could go right down almost to the ground, and then where you want to look, you can't get past 1,000 feet going down. It's just exactly like any kind of where you've got political material or military material that is off limits. Then we have it in maps today as well on the web. There's all kinds of editing and censorship in Google Maps. But if you then think that there's an entrance, and the entrance goes down and down and down and down and down in slanted ramps, you get to now you're way deep under ice, you get to another octagon, and then that goes down and down and down and down and down through ramps. And then you get to another octagon and you go down and down and down and down on ramps until you're 2 miles down under the ice, not going down in a machine. At least they didn't. They walked. And so I have been trying to share with you all first what it is that I have been discovering about Antarctica. And my prayer is for the good of all of us on this planet, that we start moving into an era where truth and facts will begin to dominate again instead of what we're in today, and that all of the governments of this world will agree together that to keep all of their fellow humans, and maybe some hybrids, completely in the dark, completely disconnected from the truth of what this planet is, what it has been, what the evolution of life has been over and over, and that just like that Defense Intelligence Agency analyst told me in December of 1999 that I've talked with you about before, Linda, our government has proof. The 3 competing, in conflict, extraterrestrial civilizations have been using this planet, harvesting genetic material to make its own containers, terraforming Earth for its own needs for at least 270 million years. As far as I know, that is an absolute fact. And people say, well, prove it. The government holds all of the proof, all of the hard evidence close to their chest. But I believe that man, and I hope someday, while we're still being able to discuss, hopefully freely for a long time, on the Earthfiles YouTube broadcast, that we'll get a breakthrough. We'll get that headline. And like I promised you, I will call Peggy, I will call Eric, I will call Brad. If it's 3 o'clock in the morning and I've gotten a buzzer on my iPhone, we will come in here and we will go live, and I will break open champagne with the bubbles pouring down onto the carpet. If it says we are not alone in this universe, and here are the reasons why. There are friendlies, there are neutrals, there are hostiles. It's taken us nearly a century to decide that we could tell you that much. And from here forward, we're going to be building bases on the moon, on Mars, and we'll be terraforming eventually out to Titan for all its hydrocarbons and beyond. And that will be the first time on planet Earth in the existence of Homo sapiens sapien that the power brokers told the people the truth. And on that note, I'm at the end of this hour. I want to thank everybody for being here tonight, welcoming Peggy and Eric, and that all of the questions that came tonight. As we go forward, I would like to do more programs, as you've asked me to do, with your questions. And so they aren't going anywhere. They're going to be preserved by dear Peggy and Eric, and we will continue to keep your questions coming. And next week, right now, it looks like I have to be away again on more production for Prometheus in Los Angeles. But it's all good news. I know what it is that we're working on. When I can tell you, I will. It is absolutely fascinating. It's going to be a brand new 8-part TV series. So you'll know that the reason I won't be here this coming Wednesday is because I will be doing this other work. But I will tell you in the future, and I will be back for that Wednesday, on that last Wednesday of August. And hopefully, now that we've gotten through a lot of the Ancient Aliens and some of the TV productions I've been doing a lot, we will go through an entire month doing every Wednesday, and I will be trying to use the energy of your incredible emails more and more about the dreams of apocalyptic things that are being echoed. And I've gotten them now, finally, I'm breaking them down into files so I could take a subject and let you know from various subjects what people are seeing in meditation, having in their dreams, having telepathic downloads. It is absolutely amazing. And it's the repetition. It's people who don't know each other. It's people who are coming from all over the world. And there are these resonances. So there's a lot for us to share. I love hearing from you. And after next Wednesday, when I'm working on that TV show, hopefully we'll come back to do Wednesday after Wednesday after Wednesday, and try, all of you, to get as many people as you know to subscribe to my Earthfiles YouTube broadcast. I love you guys.